Nice to talk to you. Sometimes we talk, questions you can't talk. Okay, that's nice.
Okay, I love the soundtrack. I love the soundtrack of the Global Forum, and the good thing with the soundtrack is that it's very different from time to time. Thank you very much. Thank you, Raban, for this wrap-up. I really feel that this was a good exercise. It was a necessary exercise. And as a humble journalist, I would say, really as a takeaway from the takeaway, we could say democracy does not solve all problems. But without democracy, we get many more problems. Thank you very much. And we go now forward to our next very exciting element of this morning, of this fourth day of the Global Forum. And I hear that the soundtrack is still a little bit there. But what we want to do now is basically to hear three very interesting initiatives, very interesting proposals, very interesting invitations to think about how can we make democracy truly democratic, how can we improve it. And for this, I would like to call 4 people coming up here. Clara Ecker from France, Andrew Holland from Switzerland, Dane Waters and Salman Yunus from the United States. Very much welcome here. Yes, you can take a stand. Clara in the middle here, Andrew, Salman, Yunus there. Very much. So you are all very much active and involved in different kind of initiatives and proposals. And we would like to start with Clara. You have 5 minutes, and the mics are a little bit sensitive, so don't touch them. Just talk into them and share your proposal, your idea. Clara.
Hi, everybody. It feels a bit weird to be here, but thanks a lot for being here. I will just speak about what is going on in France. And all of this started actually in Taiwan. That was the first global forum that Raoul and I attended. And we got that question, what are you French guys doing? Where are you? We don't see you around. We don't know what is going on in your country. So we got back home reflecting on that, and we start also discussing in the French context. So some of you may not know, so I will just recap the context a bit. We have more than 30 groups in France active on the issue of direct democracy, participatory democracy. And as we are French, we can't agree on anything. I mean, that was the past discussions. And we are all, and here I would like to give a tribute to the first guy who started fighting for democracy, direct democracy in France. His name is Ivan. He's now 86. And he keeps, sending mails and letters to the media saying, you can't say that on democracy, you are an enemy of the people. So this is my tribute to Ivan for all the work he did. So we faced many challenges. It took us 3 years to agree on something. And this is what we agree on. So I'm a bit moved also to present that today. I'm presenting it, but in the room, there is also Raoul, who has been also instrumental, the brain behind all of this. And Ludovic at the back, you can say hello, Ludovic, yes. Who's also part of the group, and many other people. So we united to climb a mountain. So we decided to present a candidate for the presidential election in France on the issue of direct democracy, so giving more power to citizens, and also discussing the problem we have with French democracy, because as some of you may know, France holds the European record for the number of days spent under emergency rules. So we had 861 days under emergency provision, so meaning very few debates in the parliament and very few rules for citizens. And what we agree on is that we will unite around one demand, which is we want citizen to have the full control over the constitution. So we are starting a bit high up, but well, we are motivated. And so we set up an umbrella organization gathering all the groups, and I can tell you more if you have questions about it, with 3 main pillars. So the first pillar is electoral action, and that may be also something that is not so common in this type of setting, but our goal here is to use the attention that is drawn to politics during electoral campaigns to speak about democracy, to speak about the role of citizens in democratic system. So that's a call also for all of the people in the group, the European groups, unfortunately. We will try to put together a list for the European elections on the issue of European buy-in for citizens. So if you are willing also to set up something in your own country with different people, don't hesitate to contact us. The second part is an education information part. So we started, and here that's the project that Ludovic is also coordinating. We set up a review, a journal, a monthly journal that is published on paper to educate about what democracy is and what's going on in other countries. Because something that is very particular of the French context is that French people are very inward looking, right? They think that, well, they know what democracy is and they don't need to also reflect on other examples. So the goal of this journal is not to educate people, but to educate people in politics, media, about what democracy is about. And together with that, and that's here the project of Raoul, we are also working on a documentary. So we may contact also some of you about it, working with some French producer, a documentary about democracy in different parts of the world. So we hope to travel a lot, travel also to your country so that we can learn from your experience and bring it back to the French debate. And the last part of our work or organization is a training for people in public administration. Because what we also realize is that people who are working in public administration are pretty instrumental in helping designing democratic innovation. Sometimes they don't know how to do it, they're a bit afraid about it. So the idea is to start with a summer school that will start next year in the summer and bring together different people from public administration in France, possibly also from the Netherlands, to discuss, okay, how can we design democratic innovations that give a strongest role to citizens in decision-making at the local and national level. That's what we have in mind. I must say that this is thanks to all of you that this started. Coming back from the Global Forum gave us also a lot of leeway to say, hey guys, we have to put our room in order, we have to agree, because if we are divided, we don't go anywhere. So we are very happy to start and open this new page of the history for the fights for citizen rights in France. Thanks a lot.
You're jumping forward to Andrew Foundations. What is it? What's your initiative?
Yes, good morning. I'm going to speak about Anschluss Demokratie. There'll be a couple of buzzwords, so please excuse me. It's a transnational, transsectoral, and co-creative process to strengthen democracy. Starting point was a gathering near Vienna, 2019, and the title, Rethink Alliances. We felt that we have to start working together in a completely different way. We have to include not just the people in the sector, in the bubble, but also open up to what we call unlikely allies, because alone we're just not strong enough to fight for the thing we want to fight for. In those 2 days we had in Vienna, we noticed, of course, the usual things: democracy in decline, digitalization, transformation, and so on. But we also noticed that there was no common strategy within the actors in the field, that there was no hope just in purely national solutions, and that we'd have to start with something in a completely different direction. So we launched a process which is called Anschluss Demokratie, which is a co-creative process. We included up to now about 120 people. We reduced it to the German-speaking region at first, because I believe very much in start quick, have best results, and then scale up. And we noticed just with Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, it's been hilariously complicated. So we started in a small format, scaling up the idea to have maybe one day a pan-European solution. The process was all work together with stakeholders from economy, civil society like activists, NGOs, academia, politicians, administration, and we worked together over a year and a half on what we call an incubation phase, run by the International Youth Center in Berlin. The incubation phase was extremely, we learned a lot. We learned that 3 countries are completely different. We learned that it's not just about the democratic system, but it's really hard to work on a systemic level. We noticed that most organizations went back into their everyday work, into their struggles, not having enough money, trying to fight for things. And we had to create an understanding that if we really want to change systems, we have to start collaborating differently. What came out after the incubation phase, and we realized we had to use these kinds of words to take fear away from people, because the initial pages were foundations, and people don't trust foundations. They think foundations, they have money, they have power, they're top down, they think they know everything. We started this process with the clear idea, we don't know much. We don't know a lot. We need people from the sector, from all disciplines, together work on something co-creative. There was little trust at first that we meant co-creative, not in a way that you work and then we decide, but we meant co-creative, we together work on something built on the knowledge coming out of the sector in a new way of network leadership, understanding. It was challenging. Some people who are here were part of the whole journey. And we realized out of it, there are like 5 sectors, 5 things really important. The first thing is to find topics. What topics are interesting for everybody? The second thing is strategic work. How can we create strategic networks working on strategies, not just on projects? We realized we need like space for learning, laboratories, for sharing knowledge. We realized we need ways of mobilization and democracy. So it's not just about learning, collecting data, sharing best practice, but how can we create movements on the international level? How can we strengthen activists? And we realized there's money involved. So we need an organization that also has money. So now we're going to the prototype phase. The prototype phase is for 3 years. The topics that came out for this project are 4. One is, as mentioned right before, the competences in democracy. How can people create their own opinion? How can they work on it? How can they really get engaged? The second was digitization, or technical transformation, challenges and risks. The third was local and rural. What can we do to protect people working in a local region, to give them tools, to learn from another, to not feel alone? And I'm sure most of you work in the field, you do feel alone fighting for a cause again and again. And the fourth was get data and share it so that we can build a community over the 3 countries. I'm a bit jet lagged, so you have to look at my notes. I'm a bit out of it at the moment. So we are launching our prototype phase, and the idea of the prototype phase is over 3 years that people who are interested, organizations, can apply for it. They will be selected by a jury out of, I think, 7, where the funders are in the minority. So it's also here, a jury made by the sector, to then, during 3 years, test what can we do, how can we work, and how can we go forward. The image of this, we call it at the moment the hub for democracy, is it's a kind of motor. It's not there to double things, it's not there to do things others don't do, but it's there to hear, to listen, where there are gaps, where is the necessity, and where can we speed up things together. Now we're waiting for applications, and the delay's just gone over last week, and we'll be selecting potential people who are going to process. They first sent us a short concept. We received 18 true national partnerships. What I liked a lot, they're partners from academia working with kind of innovation centers to activists together, and to then select a group of people, organizations who will kick off in March. And hopefully this will contribute to strengthen democracy all over the place. I think that's it. So good luck to all of us. democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And now I can give the floor to Dane Waters and Salman Yunus about their initiative.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. First, I want to say thanks to Bruno and Joe and the Democracy International and the organizers of the Global Forum. It's always great to do these forums. I'm just going to take a couple of quick minutes and then I'll turn it over to Salman since he has more things to say than I do. But as we all know, sitting in this room, one of the biggest issues we've confronted over the years is, there are a lot of referendums around the world. Some referendums that are considered, we would consider not acceptable, not, how would I put it, they do not meet international norms and standards, as what we see what's happening in Crimea and what we've seen in Donbass, which is what happened recently. And we've always been confronted, for all of us who have been involved in direct democracy, is what are the standards? What are the norms? How do you know what is a legitimate referendum versus a non-legitimate referendum? And so 2 or 3 years ago, I can't remember exactly when it was, I was excited when Salman and Seeks for Justice reached out to myself and Matt Portro to say, listen, we want to hold a referendum within the diaspora. How do we do it right? How do we do it so? How do we do it so it meets international norms and standards? And it was one of those rare examples where someone actually who wants to exercise the right to self-determination made it very clear up front that they want to do it in a way that the international community will respect it and will acknowledge it. Now, it was a very challenging exercise from the standpoint that, as Salman will talk about, India does not like this referendum, the Khalistan referendum, which we'll talk about. But so we decided to start the Punjab Referendum Commission. We're an organization that takes no, it's very important to say this, we take no position on the underlying issue at all. But we came together, it's a combination of myself, Matt Portro, Bruno, Anita Welp, Paul Jacob from the United States, and Cynthia Warday from Lebanon. We came together as direct democracy advocates and experts to kind of set what the requirements should be for this referendum to be held. I have to say, it's been very inspiring the last 2 or 3 years that as the referendum has been held around the world, I think there's been 4 votes so far in 3 different countries, that what's exciting about it is the energy that you're seeing in these referendums around the world. And what I will say is that what the commission has done, it's been a great opportunity to exercise, to try and say, listen, if you want to do a referendum, even though it's not recognized, even though it's not binding, you should follow the norms and the procedures so the world will consider it as much as possible as a legitimate and referendum. So the commission, what we've done is that we set the requirements, Seeks for Justice, and Salman, who is the liaison between ourselves and the Seeks for Justice. They have followed every procedure we set in place about voter registration, how the vote should be held, how the voting location should be, how the voter education material, everything associated with it. It's a very impressive operation. What I would argue and suggest is that any of you in this room, that if you want to do your own referendum, everyone has the right to self-determination. I would strongly suggest that you try to reach out to myself or to Bruno or to others, and so we can help guide you as far as what the procedure should be. So that's all I have to say about the Punjab Referendum Commission, and I will turn it over to Salman.
Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, Dane. Okay, thank you for allowing me to be here and speak here today on behalf of Khalistan Referendum. My name is Salman Yunus, and my academic and vocational background is from the field of law, and particularly, to be precise, international human rights law. Since 2018, I have been working as a coordinator for Global Khalistan Referendum, liaising between Seeks for Justice and the proponent of Khalistan Referendum and Punjab Referendum Commission, a panel of non-aligned experts on direct democracy headed by Chairman Waters, and the members include Bruno Kaufman, Matt Porter, and Paul Jacobs. The task, as Chairman Waters explained, of the Punjab Referendum Commission is to ensure the compliance with international standards, and my job is to get the directions from the the referendum commission and to make sure that they are complied with by the proponents and organizers of the referendum, which is Seeks for Justice. It's a great honor for me to speak here at the Global Forum in beautiful Lucerne. Being here in Switzerland, I cannot help but think of how fortunate you are here, not just because of the beauty of the city, but also because you live in a place where the right to vote, the right to choose, and the right to discuss is part of your value system and history. Sadly, more and more countries are being less like Switzerland. Increasingly, we see a contrast between strongman states and countries where decisions are made by the people. Fundamentally, there are two kinds of societies, those based on fighting and force, and those that make decisions by voting and discussions. India likes to claim it is world's largest democracy, but as my friend Jane Water has often said, you have to talk the talk and you have to walk the walk. Sadly, India does not. And it is not only SFJ, the proponent of referendums, that says and believes so about India, but it is also the opinion of some of the most respected international human rights NGO, namely Freedom House and Amnesty International. Every year, Freedom House ranks countries according to their democratic status. India was ranked a democracy until a couple of decades ago, albeit an imperfect one. It is no longer in that category in the ranking by the Freedom House. As for the Amnesty International goes, I will give one account from the Amnesty International's last year's report, which chronicles what happens to Sikh people who subscribe to the political opinion of Palestine under Indian rule. So this is the story of a woman who tells that 4 police officers came to Srimati Sisso's house and asked her about the whereabouts of her cousin, Hazura Singh. Unable to provide information, she was arrested and taken to Balachor police station. Srimati Sisso was asked to sign a blank piece of paper. She refused and was then kicked and beaten by the station house officer and the Muharrir head constable. At about midnight, these 2 men returned to her room and raped her. What I just narrated is a real life story from a country that claims to be the world's largest democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, if this was a marriage, Sikhs would have grounds for divorce from the Union of India. Through Khalistan referendum, what we are trying to ascertain is whether the Sikh peoples, both at home and in the diaspora, want to break free from the Union of India. We believe they have a right to do so under international law. In his new book, I Want to Break Free, a practical guide to making a new country, Professor Matt Pertrup, who is also a member of the Punjab Referendum Commission, whom many of you already know, writes that a country has a right to see if they do not live in a democracy. That is the view of the expert, and that is also the position of international law. But the Indian government will not let Sikhs vote and denies them the basic democratic right to self-determination. Merely for proposing and campaigning Khalistan referendum, the proponent NGO SFJ has been banned and declared unlawful in India since July 2019. Advocating and campaigning for Khalistan referendum has been criminalized, and several hundred Sikhs in Punjab, including females, have been detained, tortured, prosecuted, convicted, and jailed. The country that claims to be governed by the will of the people will not let the citizens decide. So far, SFJ has held Khalistan referendum votes in London, Geneva, Milan, Rome, and last weekend in Toronto, Canada, where an estimated 100,000 Sikhs showed up to vote in a simple, clear, and concise question. The question on the ballot was, should Indian governed Punjab be an independent country? To hold referendum is one, and to hold fair one is another. We know that referendum process has been abused by the dictators and autocrats around the world. We do not want to hold a sham vote. We want to ensure that the vote is free, fair, and transparent. That is why we have consulted with some of the world's leading experts. We have ensured that the registration of voters, the process of voting, and the counting of the ballot meets the very highest standard in the world. The referendums we have held and will be holding are monitored by international independent experts, the Punjab Referendum Commission. Democracy is to choose your own destiny and the right to self-determination. The proponents of referendum have deep commitment to non-violent struggle and use of democratic means, and hence are always open to dialogue and negotiation. We thus ask the world community, thought leaders, NGOs, and influencers to urge the Indian government to live up to its claim of democracy by not criminalizing the political opinion, Khalistan, and allowing the voting in Khalistan referendum to be held in Indian Punjab. Walk the walk and talk the talk. Accept that Sikhs' right to choose or concede that you are no longer a democracy but an autocratic state. What Sikh people are seeking is a right to choose their destiny. The Khalistan referendum is the beginning of that journey. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Very much. I hope to have you lined up here, and I have a question now to all of you. Everybody who has learned something new in this short session, stand up and wave. Stand up. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, dear colleagues, friends, democracy supporters, we want to go a step forward. We have now discussed a lot about what we experienced here, what we talked about, what there are great initiatives around the world, but also the question we want to discuss, of course, how can we save democracy? How can we protect it? How can we make it more resilient? And an important part in this is, of course, also the work of journalists like me, like us, like many of our colleagues, and also our media partner, Swissinfo. You have all seen this little pack here with the QR code, where you go directly into the 10 language information. But the best persons to introduce that will also explain to you why Swissinfo as a public broadcaster is working on democracy are my colleagues, Larissa Wheeler and Mark Livingstone. Please.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Thanks to the organizers, especially thanks to Adrian, of course, to Bruno, which we collaborate a lot with, and to Stephanie. So I think this is a unique opportunity for dialogue. I will promote a bit more dialogue today for networking. It's a backbone. It's a backbone to find common ground in this very fragile and moving society at the moment, and it's an important involvement for Swissinfo as well. So we are proud to be a media partner once again. Yeah. You heard about Swissinfo, but just a few words. Swissinfo is the international digital media part of the foreign mandate of the SSR, the public media house in Switzerland, and which is threatened again by a probable initiative coming up 25-26. So needs to be media needs to be protected because it's essential for democracy. I wanted to say that first. I come back to Swissinfo, and what does Swissinfo in terms of democracy and democracy reporting? Swissinfo has become, in the many years we are reporting on democracy, a knowledge hub of democracy, topics, issues, explanations, topics in always 10 languages. So the offering of these many years includes around 7,000 articles. Until now, most of them timelessly, as I said, explanations, backgrounds on instruments, on processes, on institutions. Every month we have around 140,000 visitors coming on this site and using this searching as well, mainly searching as well, this specific offer in 10 languages. But what's more decisive for the moment and for us here is what's our journalistic impact. And just a few words on this. We have really the chance to work and engage with Swiss Info across languages, across cultures, across different perspectives and national borders. And this is decisive for a media. So digitalization is helping us a lot to this openness, which is very strongly to connect people, to build up networks, and to help people to find each other more easily. Because what we want to do is building a bridge, opening a door for bringing these different perspectives together, using artificial intelligence as a technology, not only digitally enabling this intercultural dialogue, but also the collaboration with journalists within Europe, for example, between all the public service media. This is hugely important to provide a strong counterweight to a gender aim to fuel divisions and instrumentalize and exploit fault lines between communities in society as well, also in Switzerland. So what we want is give a safe space, a platform for public debate, for public dialogue, also to make society more independent from third-party platforms, the big tech giants, which is also really important for democracy, that this public debates is not privatized. So bringing together these attitudes, values, perspectives from all languages, regions, countries of the world on our platform is important, because ambivalences belong to the democratic public, to our coexistence, and participation means making different things more productive. And that's the approach behind it. Probably you have read the book of Roger Devec, and Roger Devec has therefore coined the term the Enlightenment, hybrid Enlightenment, hybride Aufklärung. So overcoming, blocking opposites and using ambivalences as a productive starting point. That's where we also see a modest contribution with our journalistic work and our impact with Swiss Info. So that was it from my side. I will give my word to my editor-in-chief and colleague, Mark Livingston. I wish you an interesting final day here at the Global Forum. I hope you leave with many, many different perspectives and learnings. And don't forget to join Swiss Info for inclusive debate. Thanks.
We should see a film right now.
I thought it was
After me, yeah. Okay.
be prepared.
Okay. Very honored to be here to address you briefly, and I'm honored to be here as editor-in-chief and a successor of Larissa Bieler, and it's really great work, a good team. I can take over to address democratic topics and issues. We must be clear, it's not the kind of journalism that lives off the big headlines, we know that. Nevertheless, our ambition is to reach a broad public and have the debate Larissa just told you. Because we are convinced that know-how on democratic procedures and democratic challenges are not only a Swiss asset, but that we as Swiss can help to provide this know-how to debates in democracy, no matter where in the world they take place. That's something we try to underline. That's something we'll try to underline in the short movie we will see just now. The Swiss Info journalistic focus lies on developments in the field of democracy in Switzerland and worldwide, and therefore we bring Swiss experiences, preferences, and debates into play. A good example of other journalistic work consists of is the series of Voices of Freedom, where we let active people in the field of democracy and journalism from all over the world talk about the situation concerning free speech or democratic issues. And these days, for example, we used the opportunity to interview quite a few visitors to this conference and published videos with some very diverse insights and thoughts on democratic activities
On our website, we spread them on social media as well to our worldwide community. Or the series on inclusion, which we started in late summer. In this series, we try to show the range of possibilities of inclusion by means of very concrete examples in Switzerland. It was mentioned before, inclusion is a topic and issue in Switzerland as well. So, but we try that there are different experiences made, different models tried out, and we try to report. We want to report and then show them what the discussion is going, how this discussion is going, because we think that could interest the international audience. As you know, Switzerland is not the only country with a constantly growing migrant population. So, for example, in one of the articles, we show how the Swiss city of Basel, how an association offers people without voting rights a framework for the political engagement. How, for example, on one day each year, only persons without passports are allowed to vote. And how this one day the focus lies entirely on people who otherwise don't have a political voice. Or we portray the activities of a young liberal politician who believes in individual achievements, which is precisely why he supports easier naturalization or voting rights for foreigners. So we don't provide ready-made answers. That's not the point. Societies are too diverse, we all know that, but we want to enrich the debate. Whose interests and views should be taken into account in a collective decision? In what ways should their interests and views be taken into account? What level of inclusivity is needed to guarantee a stable and thriving democracy? In the following debate, after the movie, we want to discuss ways to make democracies better and more resilient by the means of inclusion. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion with these distinguished guests. They have a great and diverse experience, and I'd like to hand over to Renate Künzi after the film we see right now. Thank you very much for your interest.
The Russian president, the whole.
Democratic resilience is very important for the recovery of Ukraine, and the European Parliament has already for many years through the association agreement between Ukraine and EU been extremely active supporting the reforms of the judiciary, parliamentary is really interesting because there is a clear need and willingness to adopt participatory forms of democracy in Ukraine, and here of course the Swiss are the best advisors.
Der Wille der Ukraine zur Europäischen Union zu gewöhnen, eine Demokratie zu sein, war unser Staatsziel heute. Ich denke, dass er hier hat und ein bereits
So, welcome to this debate. Warm welcome to the audience here and also the spectators online. The topic of the debate is inclusion, key to strengthening democracy. It's the plan to discuss with the panelists for about 1 hour and then open the discussion to you, the audience. Closing time will be at noon or a bit afterwards, so we will hopefully have a high noon here in Lucerne. Let me present the panelists. I start with Sarah Handel. Please come, Sarah. Sarah is a member of the executive board of Mehr Demokratie from Germany. It's the biggest NGO in for the promotion of direct democracy worldwide, with about 10,000 members and more than 200,000 supporters. Next is Greta from Mexico. Greta founded in 2011 an NGO called Olin, and Olin promotes the inclusion of young people in Mexico, or it started with this task. Nowadays, Greta and Olin fight for the political participation, especially the rule of law in this partly failed state. And then Antonella Valmorbida from Italy. In fact, she's also a bit Swiss, because I learned that she was born in La Chaux-de-Fonds, the famous city of Swiss watchmaking. Antonella has been the Secretary General of the European Association for Local Democracy, ALGA, for 25 years. ALGA promotes participation of citizens in their surroundings, especially also in cities. Antonella, is this panel a celebration to an event to celebrate your 25 years?
Why not? Why not? It's always time for celebration.
Very good. Okay. And last, I warmly welcome Salvør Nordal. She's from Reykjavik in Iceland. She has many hats. She's a professor for ethics and especially ombudsperson for issues of children from 12 to 17, I guess. For health reasons, Salvør will participate online. And Salvør, yesterday you told me a great news, so please share it. Can you share it with us here in Lucerne?
She's muted.
You have to unmute yourself. Yes,
hello
now we can
everyone,
hear
it's
you.
very nice to be with you, even if I cannot be in person. You were talking about Enoch.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I have now taken on as a chair of Enoch, the European Network for Ombudspersons for Children. So we had our annual meeting here in Reykjavik last week, and I will be serving as a chair for the coming year. So it's very exciting. Thank you.
And we are very happy to have you with us, even when you have not the opportunity to come here. But good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Okay, as a short introduction, I like to share with you 3 quotes I picked up during the last days. First quote: if we don't grant the same rights to all people, regardless of culture, religion, nationality, or gender, democracy cannot use the diversity of its people as a resource. These words are from Irene Perlin, which we heard and saw in the video. She's the president of the National Council of Swiss Parliament, and in this year, the highest Swiss politician. Then, democracy should be for all people, no matter where they are in life. This is Sabrina Knoll, the 16-year-old member of the Youth Parliament of the city of Lucerne. And then the third one, what to do about the algorithms? We need to invest in human autonomy, in humanness. José Manuel Ribeiro, mayor of Valongo in Portugal. This just as a short introduction leading to the point what we are talking today about. So can I please beg you to take your tables just as you wish. And let's start with the first question. You all advocate for greater inclusion in your work. What is inclusion of your, why is inclusion of your target groups important to you? Let's start with Salver in Reykjavik.
Yeah, thank you. First of all of us who are working as ombudspersons for children, we are upholding the UNCRC, or the Children's Convention on the Right of the Child. And there it's particularly specified that children have a right to have a say, and we should consult with children, and they have a right to express their views, and their views should have due weight. We as ombudspersons, we have been advocating in our countries what we call CRIA, or Child Rights Impact Assessment. And this means that we should examine all laws, policies, budget decisions, and so on, with the potential impacts it has on children and young people. And if necessary, suggest ways to avoid or mitigate any negative impacts. And systematic consultation with children is a necessary part of such an impact assessment. And of course, as I say, it's their right. Secondly, we take much better decisions on matters that concern children, and I would say just any decision really in the society, if they are in dialogue, if we are in dialogue with children and consult with them. They often have a point of view that we miss or overlook, and often very important point of view. And we must make sure not only that we listen to them, but that we make sure that they can have impact. And children often have sort of say the similar thing as many other minority groups, nothing about us without us. And thirdly, I would like to point out that participating or when children are participating in our dialogue, in our decision making, they are learning and developing their democratic skills. And if their upbringing at home, in school, and elsewhere allows children to become part of the democratic decision making and be part of the dialogue, they will learn, and we will learn, and we will have more engaged people when they become adults. So these are 3 points that I want to point out at this point now, and I will come back to it.
Thank you very much.
I don't hear it.
Is that the inclusion of young people is important for Mexico or in general?
Thank you so much for that. Bruno just told me that I cannot move the mic, but the mic has been set for Bruno. Thank you. So why did we start working with youth inclusion back in the time? It was very easy, to be honest. Back in 2011, when Olin was founded, one in every three Mexicans was young. We have the biggest generation of young people that the country had ever had. And it was very clear that youth policy was, number one, not developed, and number two, it was not a priority. So one of the things that we decided that we wanted to work on was we need to make sure that youth is a topic in the national agenda, that people, when they're thinking about any kind of policy, they think about the youth. And so we did youth inclusion, in particular, youth inclusion in democracy, in politics, also in the economic arena, let's say, for more than 6 years. And I think this will come up in the next question, but something that we realized is that when you work for inclusion, you're working for everyone else. You're making the world a more representative place. You're making the world a place where everyone really has a voice. And I think that's the core of democracy. You in Mexico, you have a country where, as I said, one in every three possible voters is young, but you also have a country where one out of two, so 50% of these young people are not coming to vote because they don't feel represented, because they don't understand the system, because the politicians don't speak their language, because it's either too complicated or too foreign for them. So we need to bridge that gap. And in doing that, we realize that it's not only young people who feel excluded, it's indigenous peoples, it's women, it's children, it's people who maybe did not have access to education. It's a lot of groups that don't feel exactly that they belong to democracy, and that is very, very dangerous. So that's why we started working on the topic of youth inclusion.
Could you measure in one way or the other the success of your initiative?
Sure, I think we were successful in many ways. We were also unsuccessful in many others, but I think that number one, people in Mexico and the world, they're talking about youth today. So I'm not saying that's just because we had that idea, but I think we contributed a little bit to it, which is really, really cool. I've seen places reserved for young people in decision-making places, which is also really welcome, let's say. But we did not succeed, for example, in the fact that young people in Mexico are still not very happy or not very convinced that democracy is the way to go, or that they need to participate, or that they need to invest their time in learning how democracy works, or how the system, or in Mexico, the government, the three levels of government work, and how they can influence them. So we still have a lot of work to do, but now we're not just doing it with young people, we're doing it with everyone who has ever felt that democracy is not representing them.
Sarah, you have a very hard task. Your goal is to bring up people's vote in Germany on national level. The last elections, there were more than 60 million people that could vote, but the parties, the Social Democrats, the Greens, just before the elections, they banned, or they let down their goal for the people's vote on national level. So what's the situation right now in Germany?
Yeah, the situation is challenging, I would say. But I first want to maybe say that we fight, like, inclusion is a very big topic for us too. But I want to say that we fight for inclusion like on 3 different levels, because yeah, first we want to fight for inclusion of the population in political decisions. So like the direct inclusion of people in the political process, which is the direct democracy thing. But also we work right now with inclusion, like Greta said, like the more, I know we all know that our societies get diverser and diverser. So we have so many groups, and I think the democratic discourse right now is not enough to bring up all the interests and the needs of these groups. And we need to organize other forms for these groups to be heard more directly. But then there's a third level of inclusion. I think that's also a very important one. It's that when we talk about inclusion, it's also that we have to include the people as a whole people. And I mean, as a person. So we tend to include only the arguments of the brain, like the arguments, the rational arguments of the people. But I think we need to go one step deeper and start to integrate people as a whole with all their humanness, like we heard it before. So I think we need to find new ways too, how to integrate people as a whole into politics, because that will give us the basis that we actually need for a discourse that is that complicated as it is in our societies today. And now coming back to your question, because we saw for a long time that politicians were actually open up to this idea of integrating people more. Like for 10 years or so, even more, the politicians said to us, yeah, we go step by step, we open up the system, we are willing to share a bit of power with you. But they changed their minds. We have to just acknowledge that, you know, like even the Greens, who were for a long time our biggest allies on these issues, they are getting afraid of people. They say, like they don't say it to us, but we know they think that people are uncontrollable, that people are manipulated, and that people cannot be left with that kind of responsibility of taking decisions. And so we need to find new ways of assuring politicians that they can do it, that they can trust us, that they can let go also of important decisions. And that's actually the field we are working right in now. How can we rebuild this trust between us and the politicians, but also, and I think it's almost the same importance, also between the people towards each other. Because, and I think the professor said it on the first evening, like we are not only going at each other in the polarized groups, we are also inside the groups going towards each other. And I think he had a really good point in saying we have to work on ourselves and start like in our nearest, closest circles, like to practice inclusion of the people around us. And first of all, also reflect on how I am more, like going into myself, reflect on myself more, and then I'm more able to actually connect to other people around me, even if they have different beliefs.
Even a larger task to promote and strengthen local democracy in many countries, and especially also trying to promote new participation tools in cities. And among these huge wide fields, do you have a special group of people that is close to your heart?
Yes, of course. I have nice memories and nice cases that I would like to share with you. But yes, just also to underline our approach, which is very close to what we are discussing today. In ALDA, we work in all the countries in Europe, EU, and in Switzerland, so not only EU. We work in the Balkans since the end of the war in 1994. We work in Eastern Europe, including in Ukraine these days and before, since 2014, and also in other places of the Caucasus and the northern Mediterranean African part. I'm making these geographic pictures to say that this local democracy approach is universal. So you don't need to sit in Lucerne or in Argotau, which I crossed yesterday, to understand the value of it. So local democracy and local participation has an added value everywhere. So it's universal, as we are listening this morning to. There is a space at the local level
around cities, around communities, there is a space for democracy. This is a space of action, of direct involvement with a direct feedback, which is unique. And this is a space that creates, as we said, democracy. This is where you can test it. This is where you can understand the value of it and see the results. And this is something that Switzerland can understand, you know, by default. Local democracy and participation is a transformative process for local institutions and for people, because it means that local governments are ready to engage and are ready to seize the challenge to include citizens in the decision-making process. Why? Because they don't have enough resources in another way. Local governments have not enough ideas, not enough money, not enough of anything. So they need to engage to sort out problems. And that's why we are partners with them, including citizens. The other element which is important, that citizens' participation at the local level is a transformative experience for people too. Because participation is a modality, it's a kind of life, it's not one-shot participation. And this is responsibility, and you need to transform people for that as well. Participation is responsibility, and this is not given for granted for everyone. Let me give you 3 examples of something which is close to my heart, as Renate said. One is the work that we do in urbanization and transformation of difficult neighborhoods around Europe. How the people can participate and be part of their destiny in a situation where you have difficult urban situation, drugs, or areas of your cities that you want to recover. And we did that in Italy, in France, in some municipalities. Another striking example, I have been working with Libyan municipalities this year. Libya is a place where there is no national government elected, nothing elected at the national level, but there are local authorities elected. So this is a casus where you have local governments, but you don't have national governments. Let's think about it. Everyone is engaging in Libya from that direction. The other example is the work that we did in Ukraine, in Mariupol, for instance, this place where that everybody knows now where it is on the map of the world. They also did an immense transformative work, and they paid the price for that because they were a truly European engaging cities. We did citizen centers, we did youth centers, they had a special policies for municipalities and for the citizens, and they paid the price for that because that was a flagship for democracy.
Thank you, Antonella. What's the fundamental importance of local democracy? This is also valid for Switzerland, of course, because if I may add this, local democracy in Switzerland is on the backslide, or has been backsliding for 30 or 40 years now. This is a slight crisis. Almost nobody talks about it, but we have to face it. For instance, municipalities have big problems to find people that are willing to do the offices, and because it's not good paid, it takes a lot of time, you don't earn a lot of honor. Just to make a short, this short remark. Next question now, I think this is a rather short round. Just give us some examples off the ground what inclusion made with people, how people were affected when they were included. And I want to start with you, Salvador, the children. What special experience did you make in your job as an ombudswoman for children issues that struck you in a special way?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we have had or tried several ways, because I just want to emphasize, when we're talking about children, children do not vote. I mean, there's in some countries, children vote from 16 years old, but generally speaking, children do not vote. So they don't have any sort of organized means to have their views heard. This is something that the ombudsperson for children in Iceland, we have been focusing very much on. How can we include children? How can we make sure that all kinds of children, because children, of course, are like other groups. I mean, they are diverse, different. I mean, they're all kinds of children, of course. And one thing that we have our young advisory group, we have youth councils, but we have now started to have every second year, and this is in our law to organize this, is to have an event which we call Children's Forum. And it's an event that is organized every 2 years. The first one was in 2019. And what we are trying there is to, as was specified earlier, is democracy, of course, is creating space, and we are creating space, secure space for children. We had about 120 or 250 children on these events that we have organized so far. And they come for one day to discuss issues that are important for them. And at this Children's Forum, they're at age 11 to 15 years old. And they choose the topics. And the idea is to get them to just sit around round tables. They discuss first with their peers and come up with all kinds of ideas. And then later in the day, they meet politicians, they meet people from the government, parliament, municipalities, NGOs, and at the end of the day, they form recommendations for authorities. And this has been a wonderful experience. I mean, we're of course learning all the time. We're learning how to do this the best way. And as I say, we are creating space. They're having dialogue among themselves. They're having dialogue with people in power. They are learning to have this dialogue. The older people, they are also the politicians who are really good at talking. They need to learn how to talk to children and give them the space, not just talk and talk.
Is also a learning for you after such a day of open debate and open meetings? How do you?
I have a difficulty hearing. Can you say it again?
Was there or is there also a learning for you as Salve Nordahl?
Yeah.
Of such a day when you watch these children in this safe space debating, meeting politicians and asking questions, making proposals?
Yeah, well, this is actually has been a wonderful experience for us. And many of the kids that come, they are shy. They haven't been sort of taking part in such a dialogue before, and we see them empowered during the day. They come and they sort of think, okay, no, can I just leave it or be on in the sideline? But then at the end of the day, they have been empowered a great deal, and the idea is to sort of give them the floor, and it has been incredible to see. And so our sort of learning experience is that, you know, if we allow children, if we give them space, if they give them opportunity to voice their concerns or their ideas, they flourish. And it's incredible to see it. But of course, this is an event in development. We are always trying to learn to do it better from one time to another. Okay.
Thank you very much,
Yeah.
Albert. I think this is a very important message for us all. Sarah, in your work in Germany, did you experience some special event where you saw people getting empowered as well as the children that Salvador spoke?
I want to tell you one example that we just had an assembly with our members in Baden-Württemberg a couple of weeks ago. And we all assembled and we started talking about one political issue. And it was really, there was people there. So the conversation was like bam, bam, bam. And it went nowhere. And people were obviously feeling frustrated. I felt it all over the room. And then we stopped and we did this thing that we are experimenting with. It's a new format. It's called listening and talking. Like, it's just a working title, but and it's another format of getting into a debate with each other. And it works like that you go into small groups of 3 or 4 people, and then every person has 3 minutes to talk. And it's just a small thing to do, but giving somebody a room that he or she knows is only for herself. This room cannot be invaded. Nobody will interrupt me. Nobody will say I'm wrong or say that would be better like that. So people have this room, they know it before, and they just talk. And the other people, they listen, but they don't listen like, you know, like looking at their phones or something. They look at you and they really try to see you. And people feel that. And this small thing, and everybody has his place. So we go around once and then another round, because people already felt something in the first round. And then we do it again and it gets a bit more intense. And to see that such a small thing changes totally the dynamic of a conversation, and that people who were, and I was with that guy who was before, like, you know, we call them Querulanten, like it's a German word of people who are crazy. And I was in the group with this guy, and even that guy, when he talked, because we are all experts about ourselves, you know, like nobody knows more about ourselves than we. So when he spoke about himself and he explained us why maybe he has this position, then we could actually relate to him. So we did this thing and we felt all that we connected on a human basis with each other. And afterwards we had another talk about a topic and it was a whole different world. And that was just an amazing experience to me, that we don't only need to reach for the big reforms, you know, the structural reforms. We can do things on a very small scale, and it still can have a real huge impact on our democracies.
Very impressive. Thank you, Sarah. Antonella, you already mentioned the people in Libya. Do you have another example of where you really were happy to see the seeds of your work, or the work in general, to strengthen local democracy, you know, grew and came to success?
Yes, fortunately, because after 25 years with a little bit of successes, it will be a bit disappointing. Yeah, I like the point also that my colleague mentioned about how you engage, and I think that then we give the examples as well. For local governments and for citizens, you have to, if you want to be together, if you want to give solution, you have to come up with a proposed formats. This one that she mentioned, or others, especially also local governments, they want formats about how to engage with citizens And I want to mention here that ALDA is very much working with the Code of Good Practices of Citizens Participation that was produced by the Council of Europe. I know that this is a piece of paper, but it has nice boxes, and you know what to do in case of campaigning, in case of advocating in decision making, and it is a sort of guide. Because a lot of local governments, they think that citizens' participation is a meeting with the citizens. And this is not the point. Citizens' engagement is building something together, is changing policies together. In this sense, I wanted to say that, for instance, I have some examples. We did recently in a nice project in the north of Italy, where I'm coming from, a project on preventing floods, for example. This is a place where there are regularly floods. And you realize you can do something on infrastructural work as you are building houses or roads, but a lot has to be done with citizens' awareness about how to not only live, but build your house, how to build your garden. So we have been working a lot on inputs of citizens about how to improve and preventing floods in this region. So this has also a very direct impact. The second thing that we did all over Europe is migration policies. Migration policies are by default national policies, and they tell you we are going to do collective centers, we are going to send money to people who are receiving migrants, etc., etc. But local governments can talk with citizens and can, we can have these practices, and we had practices where citizens were proposing alternative policies which were not the national policies. In Italy, the national policies will be to have collective centers. In some of the cities where we worked, the mayors decided on alternative ways, because collective centers are creating long-standing ghettos. And they were proposing to have inclusive communities, receiving people in families. And that was the production of citizens' engagement. I want also to mention that in an exercise that we are doing together with Bruno and other people in this room, we are also developing a collection of practice, which is the European Capital of Democracy, where we are checking together with those who are proposing themselves what are the good practices, because I think that they are fantastic practices in Europe that we can valorize.
Thank you, Antonella. Now to Greta. In Mexico, your country, native country, is often in the news with, organized crimes, murderers that are not prosecuted, no rule of law. And what is your seed of hope? What did you see and gave you hope and optimism going out from your project, All In, or wherever in Mexico, to see people going really in the way of democracy and strengthening participation, not being part of the established system?
How much time do I have for that question?
Just one example, please.
Okay, so I'll make it 5 minutes. Thank you, Renat, for that question. So I think there's always hope. I mean, when you live in Mexico, you face all these horrible things that Renat just said, but you also face a country where people are really colorful and people are really living from their hearts, and that is something that we need to use to change our country. So one of the examples that I can give you of a super good practice that we found that also has to do with inclusion is that we at All In, we are running a participatory budgeting pilot in an indigenous community in the state of Hidalgo. This community is also very well known for being absolutely non-participative. They hate the system. They really don't trust anything. So we went there and we talked to them and we proposed to have a PV pilot for them, which after a lot of dialogue, they accepted and they were willing to trust us because we don't come from the government. And one of the rules that we set for them, that we set together with them, is that everyone in the community from 10 years old and upwards, they could have a vote. So number one, of course, and we're doing this with in a coalition with our friends from the Electoral Institute of Hidalgo, who are very institutional, let's say, and they are very keen on keeping the vote or the political rights for people that are 18 and upwards. So we had a very interesting conversation, and we said, hey, listen, this is just an exercise. Let's see what happens. No, let's give children and young people the right to participate in an election, which is not an election, but in a participatory process, and let's see what happens. So what happened was, number one, the community became engaged. We had more than 3 times the number of participants that we had for the last referendum in the national level in Mexico. So we actually saw a lot of things. So number one, we saw children and young people getting involved and getting engaged in proposing projects, talking to their friends. They were like really excited that they could propose projects and that they could vote for them. So they were like, oh, I'm gonna bring all my friends because I want my project to win, right? But they also brought their families. So we saw this super amazing phenomenon where you had a 12-year-old who was dragging his mom or his dad, like, hey, let's go to the polling station. You need to vote for my project, right? So in that way, we more than tripled the participation of people engaged in the community, but we also got super amazing projects. So the winning projects were a football court, of course, a playground for children, and something, and the environmental program where we're going to be planting trees around the community. So these kinds of projects are the things that are in the minds of young people or of children, while the adults were thinking more about, I don't know, like having some entrepreneurial lessons and stuff. But I think this is an example of the things that can happen when you open participation of a little bit. Maybe not for electoral purposes, no? Maybe we're not saying that children who are 10 years old should vote. We could talk about it, but but we're not saying that, at least not right now. But we're saying that when young people and when different people feel that they can change their communities, they will do it. And most of the times, it will be a good change. It will be a change for the many and not just for the usual sectors who are deciding how communities are built. So I really think this is something that we should build upon, not only in Mexico, of course, but we as a group of people who are in love with democracy, we totally need to carry this message around and be more inclusive ourselves also.
Thank you, Greta. Now, Sarah, you inspired me for the next question. Let's create a 2-minute stage for each of you and try to convince the elected politicians why diversity is a resource that benefits, that could be of great value for democracy, but try to really to stick to the 2 minutes, Sarah.
Okay, you said you wouldn't go away from your questions. Now you did just that. That's okay. We jumped 2 minutes. Okay. Dear parliamentarians, we're all here today because we need to create a new deepness of our democracy. So I really think you should notice, as our representatives, that you don't know everything about all of us. So you're just a group of people who got elected for some time. So you're not that different than us, and you don't know much more than us. So I think you should notice, and we can do that together, that we should open up our democracy and give voice to more people, to more perspectives, and to see then how we as a whole society are able to integrate all these needs of all these people. Because I think we need to acknowledge that at the end, we are all minorities sometimes. So we cannot live in a society of majority rules and leave the minorities behind. And we need to create a new culture where we have decisions, and sometimes you lose because you are in the minority, but we still need to provide for these minorities too. They cannot be left behind because we need to go forward together. And in these times of polarization, I have no idea if I spoke 2 minutes or not.
It was a bit longer.
Okay, then one last sentence. In this time of polarization, it's our only chance of building a community together if we learn how to integrate minorities in a way that it makes them feel included.
Sarah, please don't blame me for picking up your input.
I never will.
Salva, what is your short message to convince governments and elected politicians in democratic institutions that diversity is of great value, let's say of basic value for a good functioning democracy? And also try to stick to the 2 minutes limit.
Well, I'm just going to talk about it from a children's point of view, and I know, and I've seen it, I have experienced it, and I've seen it through lots of politicians, that when they talk to children, when they listen to children, they get inspired, they get valuable viewpoints that they cannot see and get otherwise, unless they hear what they say. And for instance,
can you give an example of some?
I can't hear you.
For instance, if you can make an example.
Excuse me, I can't hear. I couldn't hear what you say. Just repeat.
Probably you have to close down your mic to hear. Do you hear me now?
Now I hear you. Yes, I hear you now.
Oh, okay. Can you give us an example of such an inspiration that politicians took home after debating and being together with children?
Well, I mean, I have seen it in many cases, for instance, on municipality levels, but we also brought children to talk to politicians when they were making all these COVID decisions, and hear from children, you know, if children from immigrant backgrounds, children from low income families, they were taking decisions that affected them, and when they heard from themselves, you know, that we could see that there was they finally understood what was at stake. So yeah, I think I've seen quite many examples of that.
Thank you, Salva.
It's okay. Yeah, sorry, it's been some problems with the mic here.
This is quite an encouraging message to politicians to listen more to children's voices And I'm absolutely happy that I learned Wednesday night that this city, the hosting city, Lucerne, has a children parliament for many years now. And I think Adrian played a certain role in establishing that children parliament. I think this is a very good initiative. I think even that Lucerne could be a bit more offensive and promoting this success also in other cantons. Just to make this remark. Antonella, your take-home message or your call to politicians, why diversity is basic?
If I have 2 minutes or if I have a little time to talk to local politicians about the value of diversity, I would say that I will not speak, I will act, because I think that diversity is not something that we need to explain, because diversity is the reality. It's what we are living today. So when we say our communities are multicultural, multi-ethnic, yes, they are and they will be. So this is the reality. So I struggle to explain the reality, because I mean, open your door and you see your reality. So what I would do is to spend this little moment that I have to convince, to organize a process to solve together an issue. Because if you work together, if you meet together, even if you are diverse, this diversity is seen from another perspective, because you are there looking and working for a common goal. So I would put together a process where all the parts of this diversity are part of, and we work together, solving something for school, something for the neighborhood, solving something for another very pragmatic issues. Because then when you work together, when you solve things together, there is no color, there is no age, there is nothing. So I think that I'm a bit tired of explaining the reality. Do you want me?
Nita, your words.
Okay, so if I were to address the politicians of the world, I would say something like, dear politicians, I'm very glad you got elected. Now stop thinking about elections. Think about the people that you're representing. Think about how the work that you're doing today is not for you, it's not for your party, it's for the people that you represent. When you say you are working for diversity and then you upload a picture of you talking to an indigenous woman, I have news for you, that's not inclusion. When you do that and you take another picture holding a brown baby, that is not inclusion. Inclusion means that you actually engage in dialogue with people who don't think like you, with people who don't believe, who don't belong to your party, who don't believe the same things that you do, and then you take all this information into consideration when you're doing your legislative work, because you work for everyone. It's not just about the voters who voted for you. It's about making sure that the country and the world is a place where every person feels free, feels heard, and feels like they belong. Thank you.
Now we know that for us, I think everybody here in here agrees that diversity is a lot, means a lot of opportunities, has a lot of potential to make a democracy, a better democracy. But reality looks different. Elected politicians, they don't like to share their power to have more citizens to have a say. We learned that local democracy is key in empowering citizens to shape democracy from the bottom, and not just be there to fulfill the rules and the laws that come from the parliaments and the government. So this is, I think this is absolutely crucial. When we look now at the groups that are excluded in democracies, there are a lot of groups, as we heard today, children, of course, foreigners, people of with different religions, different cultures, also people, one group we didn't mention today so far, people with mental disabilities that, for instance, aren't included in the political rights in Switzerland, only in one canton. One of 26 cantons in Switzerland included, it's Geneva, who included last year the people with mental disabilities into the voting right, into political rights. So this is also a group we have to mention. And the risk is that groups that are not included, they risk to be left behind. They won't be represented in the political institutions, especially in the parliaments. And now let's talk about, I guess it's already the final round here on the podium. Let's discuss some proposals, for instance, autocracy, you know, to build up committees and assemblies with randomly selected citizens. Is this a way out for a solution for a better representation? Are quotas, or are there other instruments to include excluded groups? What do you think about autocracy and other proposals, Antonella?
I think that this is a way of doing it. Why not in some cases? So I think that when we adopt the participative mechanism in a city, in a community, you need to have several ways of using participation. So maybe this sample is one of them. Certainly, what we need to do is to have the instruments to have on board those who are not naturally easily coming to you. So the new forms of participation mean to go to the people and not to ask the people to come to you. So just to give you an example, I work in places where there is a soldier with a machine gun in front of the door of the municipality. So you cannot ask the people to come to the municipality. This is quite, discouraging. So we need to have policies to go to the people with the modalities that we need to have. So in terms of how you look, how you speak, how you relate. So engaging and to look for those people who are never involved, you need to get ready to go to them and to use this modality. For instance, there is the whole dimension of the people who don't know, who are illiterate. They don't know how to write. This is not the case in this part of the world, but in many places there are this very broad community and people that are not able to write and read. So how do you engage them? That shows you that you need to have this attitude so that they can be taken on board. There is a last point that I want to mention. I don't think that when you put in place participative processes for policy making at the local level, which is my interest, field of interest, you don't need necessarily to have everybody involved. You need to have cases, you need to have all kind of people representative. But if you have as an ambition to engage everyone, you go straight to a frustration. So you need to have, the objective is to take the participation of all the stakeholders, types of stakeholders, but not every one of them, and to make sure that you go to them to collect their information. If you want to have in a participative process 3,000 people, let's imagine in a city like Lucerne, it's a lot of people. It takes ages to do this kind of things. But maybe you can have a sample or modalities where you can be happy with that because you have representation from all groups. So let's think realistically. That's not realistically. Yes, that's what I want to say.
Thank you, Antonella and Sarah. Germany, I think, and also, especially also your city where you lived in or still live in, Stuttgart, has quite a remarkable expertise in assemblies and groups with random citizens. For me, with this new formats of participation, the question is always, what is the result? Are they just have a consulting role, or can they decide about anything, binding decisions, or what? What can you tell about these new formats?
Yeah, I mean, it is quite exciting to experiment with them, and I think it goes around the world that more and more people use them, autocracy, to actually get like normal people that have no hidden agenda, no power play, to come together and speak about the topic. And I think it's totally useful to develop good laws, because you can integrate so many perspectives, people come together, and for them it's a super inspiring experience. I mean, people who take part in that, they are connected to democracy in a new way. But also, even if you have a super law, it doesn't automatically mean that the rest of society think it's great. And I think that we have to keep in mind, you cannot outsource democracy, never, to just a small group. And we cannot do the same mistake again, like before we said the politicians should take the decisions, then we say, okay, this citizen assemblies can do the work for us. I think we have to be in mind that still, if we have a good law, we need to go out there and engage the people. And there it is really important to me. I noticed this yesterday, because when we want to engage, I mean, everybody is too much to ask for. But if you want to engage a lot of people, we have digital tools now, and we have to develop them better, because right now digital tools, they don't really connect people. You know, there is this bureaucratic homepage where somebody has written something and now you should write something. That's no democratic experience. That doesn't make you want to engage more or have fun or feel part of something. So I really think we should work on large-scale engagement tools that use the digital world to still make us meet as human beings. Because we need to be careful with these digital tools that we don't reduce ourselves again to just an opinion. And I think we have a lot of developed there, but I think the potential is huge, and that we just need to keep up with that potential.
Thanks, Sarah. Salver, do you see any great potential in these new formats, such as autocracy?
I think that is a great tool to at least complement many other ways. And I think we can, democracy needs that we use different and various ways to reach out to people. And for instance, if I come back to my field and Children's Forum, for instance, we get a random sample from the Iceland registry of children, of 300 children, and we invite them to come. But that doesn't solve all the issues we have. We are trying to reach out to diverse group, and this is a challenge every day. And we have to, even if we get a random sample and we use lottocracy and send invitations, it's still difficult to reach out to some groups. So we have to always make an effort to reach out to, for instance, children with immigrant background, children with disabilities, you know, and we are striving every day to really reach out to them. Because for instance, I'm the ombudsman or ombudsperson for children in Iceland, and I'm supposed to represent all children, all different kinds of children. So I need to really have all kinds of ways to reach out to these groups. And lottocracy is an important tool among many others.
Thank you very much. Sander, last word for Greta.
Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about quotas. I think quotas are a good idea in principle, as long as they remain temporary and a way of getting to a more diverse society. Quotas have helped Mexico, for example, to have, we have very, very, very strict gender quotas, for example. So now the parliament, the Congress in Mexico is around 50-50, no? So 50% women, 50% men. But what is very surprising is that this parliament has been also very silent on women issues, right? So quotas will help women get there, but that does not necessarily mean that women in Mexico are doing better because now we have women legislators. So what's happening? A lot of things, starting with the fact that women legislators are also subject to whatever their parties tell them to vote for, right? So yes, we can use quotas to get minorities to the decision-making places, but we also need to work, we also will need to work on getting, making sure that these minority groups or that these groups of people actually have a real voice in the matters that really will help shape the country into a more inclusive and diverse society. So it's not only about the quotas are helping indeed, but we need a much more profound structural transformation to make sure that these people are actually there representing the groups of people that they're supposed to represent. And that we cannot do with the quotas. We need to do a lot of education. We need to do a lot of actually like political will changing to get there. So it's a very difficult question, but I think we're getting there very slowly, and we need to acknowledge these facts if we really want to get to a diverse society. Thank you.
Much to my surprise, it's high noon. This was the final word. I can make you an offer, and this is really a good offer. Everybody here is invited to continue the conversation on our debate on Swissinfo. You can participate in any language, that is in 10 languages, the most important 10 languages in the world. At the entrance, you can pick up one of our flyers, and with a QR code, you get on our overview pages with the most recent articles and videos on the topic of democracy. And you can discover what we produce there. But Robert, please be very, very, very short.
Thank you so much. to Greta, you know, there seems to be an underlying presumption here that we need to bring everybody under one umbrella. I wanted to ask Greta,
You have to discuss.
is she aware of the autonomous places in Mexico and Chiapas and other places that don't see the need to join? And that in fact, maybe decentralization is what we need today, not centralization. There's a presumption of centralization in this conference. It's a European tradition that we have to bring everybody under some fold, while indigenous people in the Americas have come together under thousands of formats. And can we not learn from them? Or do we have to maintain with this European-centric idea that we have to come under one flag and one idea, when there are thousands of ways that human beings can associate?
Thanks, Rob. We got this message.
Greta Rios, una pregunta, por favor.
Yeah.
Let's discuss this outside, but I agree with you. This is a very, very, very interesting topic, and it would take us a very long time to discuss here, but I agree with you completely.
Greta will be here, and I think you can discuss bilaterally or on our debate online. Yes. And now I want really to thank you, all of the panelists. Salver, it was a pleasure to have you. Thank you for your important. Insight, I think, for all of us children, we know now that children in the public debate must have their space. This is really a very important message. Thank you, Antonella, for giving us insight in your very important work as well, Sarah. And all four of you, big success in your further life as an activist and promoter of direct democracy. Thank you. As a little gift, we have water bottles. Yes. And Salve, is she still here, Salve? She will get it by mail. Please help yourself. And another one. As it's no surprise, as you can see, it's a very typical Swiss gift. So it was a pleasure to have you here. Thank you once more. Okay.
Thank you very much, Rena. Thank you very much, all participants in this panel. I think saving democracy will not be easy, but there's no alternative to it. And it's not only a noble task, it's also a very, very necessary task. And as the Global Forum also shows, it can be a very funny task. So we think it's now time for the magic half hour of every Global Forum, which means that we are presenting a draft of a declaration, the Lucerne Declaration of Multilateral Democracy. And even if we are trying to bring together here at the forum different ideas in a way, one forum, that doesn't mean that this is a centralizing effort, but it's an effort how to bring the diversity and the different ideas together so we can work forward. And the matching half an hour is a task which Joe Matthews, my colleague and co-president and friend for 10 years now, have trained to do. So I hope he will be up to the task here today as well. But it's also, of course, up to you, because this is not like that we are now starting to write a new text. It's really about trying to bring together the ideas, the soundtrack, the inputs from this forum and create something like a common message to the future. And it will be important if you want to comment, if you want to share, that you do that in a very constructive way, a very way of trying to maybe support it, but also in a way to, if there is something which you think is left. And we will see how it works. And Joe, was it difficult to draft?
Yes, it was. There was a lot said in a very short period of time, and I tried to get to a lot of different things. Before I start, we will hear after this, please stick around, there'll be some instructions from Bruno and an introduction to the next global forum. My t-shirt reflects that. This is the t-shirt of UNAM, which is one of our supporters. Excellent. The Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, the National Autonomous University of Mexico, which is associated with a soccer team, a football team called Pumas. Mi corazón es azul. And has a great cheer. Part of its cheer could be the theme of the next forum, which is "Cómo no te voy a querer." How are you not going to like it or love it? Love it, right? So anyway, let's get to this. I'm going to read through. We'll see if they can get me. They're going to try to get this up on the screen, but I'm going to read. I'm sorry, not a lot of coffee shops open Saturday mornings in Lucerne, so you may have to share and take notes, but this is good. This is editing in. This is kind of a nightmare for me as a writer. I mean, you like to have one good editor, maybe a second one, but like 100 plus is a nightmare. So please be kind and gentle. The idea is to sum up very succinctly, and I don't know that I did a good job at being succinct and short in doing this, sort of things that were said at the forum. It will not, the idea is not to include everything or to list everything, and this may be too long, so suggestions for cuts are particularly welcome. Here we go. They've got it. The Lucerne Declaration of Modern Direct Democracy. We are more than 500 people from 6 continents and more than 60 countries. We are scholars, journalists, local officials, election administrators, lawyers, teachers, entrepreneurs, and activists whose lives and work center on democracy. We met in Lucerne at the 10th Global Forum on Modern Direct Democracy. We have also traveled together to discussions in 3 other Swiss cities, Aarau, Uster, and Bern. Over 4 days, we discussed direct, deliberative, and participatory democracy in a forum that was free and open to anyone in the world who wished to attend. This is our declaration. Our conversations were shadowed, but also inspired by the threat of autocracy and authoritarianism in our countries and communities, by the pandemic era declines in democracy in too many places, and by the urgency of the climate crisis. We have many disagreements, which is good because disagreement is central to democracy. But we also had a strong shared sense that we need to change how the world thinks about democracy. Put simply, democracy should always be thought of, evaluated, and developed from the bottom up. To survive and grow, democracy and its friends must focus more on empowering everyday people. And the powers of democratic citizens must involve much more than voting for representatives. We, the people, must have the right to make our laws, to develop our plans, and to change our constitutions, to conduct the work of democratic government ourselves. In other words, you know what? I think that was a mistake. Let's just cut that. The next sentence says it. In other words, the people of the world have the right to govern themselves directly. We recognize that we are in a very difficult struggle, a true fight from Manila to Manaus to Mariupol to protect and extend the democratic powers of everyday people. We struggle with the polarizations and divides in our society. We struggle with how to include everyone in our democracy, especially those people who reject democratic values. Most of all, we are struggling to find ways to better connect today's democratic decision-making to the future. We have many ideas for improving existing direct democracy tools like initiative and referendum so that they are more democratic. And we are excited about the innovations we're achieving in deliberative bodies and tools, especially citizens' assemblies that give people the power to govern themselves and address difficult challenges. But we are still looking for better ways to give more democratic power both to young people and to future generations who will live with the consequences of today's choices. We can't clearly see this future, but in our conversations, we have identified the greatest possibilities in combining different forms of democracy, representative, deliberative, direct, into something new. In past forums and in previous declarations, we have pleaded for more time in our democratic processes, especially in our local democracies. Democracy does require us to slow down so that we can listen to our allies and our opponents, a process that works best when conducted in person, locally. But in Lucerne, we reminded ourselves that time may not be on democracy's side. We conclude our forum with a fierce urgency to defend and extend democracy right now in service of a greater future. We adopt this declaration in love and solidarity with people in Ukraine and all those who are fighting for democracy around the globe on September 24th, 2022, at the Global Forum at the University of Lucerne. We see this declaration as a first draft summarizing our work here. We welcome the suggestions, corrections, and contributions of the world. Okay. Anyway, so here's what we're going to do. Please, since we don't have a ton of time, deal with things that you think you just can't live with that are in there, or things that you just can't live without. There were, I got a series of, Oscar got a sneak peek, and Ern Leitner had made a few suggestions I want to run through here. In the first page, last paragraph, second line, by the threat of autocracy and authoritarianism in countries and communities, he proposes to insert there, including misused referenda by Putin. Erwin generally feels that this forum needs to state, I hope I'm putting this right, Erwin, interrupt me if I'm wrong, this needs to make a clear statement on the referendum in the sort of the bogus, latest bogus sort of Putin referendum. I didn't hear much about it, and I don't know how people feel about that, but I wanted to reference that. Let's see. He suggests on the second page, adding the second to last paragraph, at the end of the second to last paragraph, the one that starts, we recognize that we are in a very difficult struggle. A sentence that says, we want Ukrainian people to experience real, direct, and participatory democracy. And we oppose pseudo-referenda slated by autocrats to fix the unjust occupation of foreign territories. Those are two things. I mean, do we have a sense of those? Do we want, are those the sorts of things we want to add? He had a couple other little things as well too, but I want to stop at two. This is, I think, to the good. This is to the bad. Put your hands up. If I don't see a lot, I'm going to rule broadly by consensus. Okay, wait, let's come back to that. It's hard to be the first one to start, but let's see. He suggests in the last page, also language there. We conclude our forum with a fierce urgency to defend, extend democracy now in service of greater future. He wants to add, this includes the objection of plebiscites started from above by autocrats. Direct democracy should be in the hands of the people during the question to decide and to decide on starting it. They were cleaning up the language, but that was the fourth thing. Any interest in that? Or no? Okay. All right. Let's go to the room. Who's got? Where are the microphones? Caroline?
I'm running this. No.
Okay. Bruno's running this. There are three microphones down here. I see.
No, I'm running this by sectors because otherwise.
Okay. All right.
We start here up in this order. Any comments you want to make or to include here in this order? Okay, there's a proposal. Yeah. But no corrections at these things. Please leave them right. Just if it's really a content. Yeah.
Just on the first side, we are coming from 60 countries, as you said. But then in the fifth paragraph, our conversations were shadowed by authoritarianism in our countries. I would say many countries, not all, not in all 60 countries.
Yeah. That's right, that's a great point. Is everyone okay with that? I like that.
Thank you. Okay? This one. Okay, I'm going down to the next sector here. Yeah, coming. Yes, pretty people here. Very, very short. Okay.
I would like to strike out the pandemic era because the declines of democracy started earlier.
First page, fifth paragraph.
I think that's a good point. The pandemic era being struck out, the decline started earlier, certainly that's true. I did want to just mention the pandemic because people mention it so often. I'm just sort of reporter style listening to you and it came up quite a lot. But I think I probably have done this in a way that's wrong. So if there's a better way you would propose to mention the pandemic.
Okay, next.
How about the declines of democracy? I mean, you can, look at this.
Joe?
Yes.
You could just insert that the pandemic responses accelerates.
Okay. Oh, interesting. That's one thought. Okay. This one good.
Okay. Joe will try his best. So,
okay. Oh, that's yeah. Keep. I'm gonna hold on. Let's do it. I know we don't have much time, but bye. It's during the pandemic, right? I mean, it wasn't like, COVID, we can't blame the virus didn't take anyone's democracy away itself. I mean, it did a lot of bad things, but, okay. Okay, what next? Yes.
After which to attend, according to our last panel, we need more education, democratic education.
Okay. That's true. That was a definite theme, and we haven't used the word education. Where would you propose to add?
It was just the last area.
On the first page.
Which to attend is. We need more after attend, which to attend, and then we need more democratic education, especially for children.
I think that's a good ad. Not sure I think that's the right place for it.
Okay.
I think I would add it. Maybe in the second page. So where I am now, well, we could do it in young people here. We could do it in the second. Yeah, that's right. More and better.
yeah, okay.
Does that work? Is that okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Traisan. I'm here at Amsterdam and excited Denmark. I would like to suggest here to have the solidarity with people in Libya, and I would like to get the room to support that if we can add like Cambodia, because Cambodia is a serious violation, human rights violation, and there's no democracy. There's like dictatorship for a long time, it's 40 years, that committed crime against humanity and violate human rights. So I would like to suggest group to support those fighting for democracy in Cambodia. That's why, yeah, I think that's
Maybe my ears are the room, but I'm not actually quite hearing exactly what you're saying. To support democracy in
Cambodia.
Cambodia. Oh, Cambodia. Okay, yeah. Okay. Do people want to add Cambodia? We do single out Ukraine. Ukraine gets a lot of explicitly gets love here. No one else gets especially named for love. Do we want to add Cambodia? Does that mean that we add lots more places?
Yeah.
You want to include Palestine, you want to include, I mean, Palestine, that to me strikes me as an opening of, as we sometimes say in English, a can of worms. How do people feel about, do we want Cambodia, yes or no?
We mention all countries, or we mention none.
Yeah, mention all countries, mention none. Is there up, down? I'm not seeing a lot of love. Anyone, put your hands up high if you really want Cambodia and others mentioned. Okay, I'm not seeing a lot of love for that, sorry. Yeah.
Bora Yilmaz from Nancy in France. At this point, I would, in love and solidarity with people in Ukraine, I would add a word for Democrats refusing the war in Russia.
Can you repeat that, Bruno?
Huh? Yes, and Democrats refusing the war in Russia.
And solidarity people and Democrats refusing?
Yes.
I'm struggling with the meaning.
Yeah, being against the war.
And people opposing the war.
Yeah.
Opposing the war.
We mentioned all countries, or we mentioned none.
And people. You don't think that's covered by the next phrase? And opposing the war. How do you want to do that? So hold on. So what are people thinking about that? Is that this or this? Yeah, it's not definitely not I'm seeing more thumbs down than up. So I'm not going to do that. Sorry. Thank you. Who's next?
Thank you, Joe. I have one quick proposal. When you have a paragraph that starts, we struggle with the polarization at the bottom of the second page on the print.
Thank you.
And that, and one additional sentence at the end of that paragraph. Quote, but, comma, we recognize that the right to self-determination includes the right to disassociate, comma, and deny would-be outside authority of our chosen communities. Period.
Slow that down. Give me that after the, which is the right to self-determination includes the right to what?
Disassociate, comma, and deny would-be authority outside of our chosen communities. Period.
Okay. Everyone's seeing that now. I think it's called self-determination correctly. What do people feel about that? This or this? Let's seem high if you want it. Yeah, there's, sorry, not much enthusiasm there. Okay, who's next?
I think we have to include this information in the, after this is our declaration, there is a paragraph where you're talking about the urgency of the climate crisis.
Yeah.
I think it's also extremely problematic for democratic countries to have social media that is sharing fake news 6 times faster than real news. So, and it's creating polarization in a lot of democratic environments.
So you get that social media, how would you phrase it?
And by the urgency of the climate crisis and the fight against disinformation.
Okay, let me try something here. By the creative democracy group, it comes by misinformation, fake news. How's that? Something like that? What do people think of that? Yeah, this or no? I've seen a lot of not hands go up. That one has a strong majority, but I'm not sure, I know we don't believe in turnout quorums generally, Bruno. But let me try that again. If you like that, put your hands up. Okay. And then if you don't like it, okay, I'm actually only seeing 2 thumbs down. I think I'm going to go with that. There's a second block of people didn't do anything. So I think we had a majority there. So I'm going to go with that. It's a close call. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So part of that, you've got the climate crisis in there. I think that's really important. What I'm really missing, though, we have a whole track of transnational global democracy with no reference to ways in which we need to really address local problems through global direct democracy. And I think that needs to get in there. So something like we need new tools to accelerate global democracy, something like that. Channel our energies to address.
Okay. All right. This I can blame Bruno Kaufman for, which is my go-to strategy in matters. I had reference to that and it got cut in first case. So let's see if I can reproduce that. This is from one. Or let's start. Let's see. Okay, so this was this. Was this how did you get it to the full screen? Did you just full screen it? Was this focus? Okay, so so I had one here that said the following. Maybe we want to edit it. At least I got the word transnational in before Bruno savagely edited me. So we also see the need to stop separating different levels of democracy: local, regional, subnational, national, transnational. Instead, we're also thinking about how to build democracy can solve problems at all levels. That may be the wrong sentiment, but that was some text I had in the first draft. Do people want to write something new? Do you have a specific thing to say? I think that's the place for it. I heard a lot of talk about levels. Do people like that or? Okay. All right, so it has support right down. So there's not much against it, but there wasn't the support. I don't think meant got to the thing. Do we want to have something that's maybe more straightforward?
Yes.
Maybe someone wants to work on that. Take a few minutes. Let's take some more things and take a few minutes.
Yeah, you asked me to make it shorter, so.
I understand that, but you took out this essential transnational democracy.
Absolutely. Can I come in on that? I think, yes, it's difficult to read. And I think one of the reasons is that we have a mix between descriptive parts and exhortative parts.
Yeah.
And we basically, most of it is descriptive. We have a paragraph starting with this, we have many layers, there's the looking, you can clearly see the future. So we could disentangle the document, putting the operative parts together and the descriptive parts. And there's only 3 operative parts there on page 2. It's paragraph 2, 3, and 4 on page 2. That's the only operative parts. That's where we say democracy should always be sort of bottom up. We must focus on empowering, and we have to write on ourselves or themselves. There's only 3 operative paragraphs. I think they should be put together and discussed first, because that's where we put our political limit.
Okay, interesting. So let's do that. Should be thought of and valued from the bottom up. And then the others are, the other paragraphs you want to put up are what?
They could be at the beginning. Let's say descriptive can be at the beginning, but it's not so important. But number 2, 3, 4 on page 3 are the operating ones, important ones. Can also be done later.
Okay, okay.
I think that's wrong now.
Do people-
In a way, the process is now that we basically agree on what's in it and then fine tune it and finalize it. You're also welcome to send proposals, Joe.
That strikes me as a very smart edit, though, because it was,
okay.
Okay. I don't make a note.
On the third.
Is that okay? Actually, do people like that note? Or, again, all right. A lot of abstentions, down. Okay, all right, I'm gonna see. Yeah, I'm just, okay, go ahead, next.
On the third page where we talked about initiative referendum to be more democratic, I propose to add at the end of the paragraph to lower the cost of collecting signatures and to protect the environment. We should have online petition collection systems. Thank you.
Okay, again, that's where exactly, it's the end of the third page and sort of added, here's some.
Second paragraph on the paper.
Second paragraph on the paper, there's many tools for improving, yeah, I'm excited. And then you would add after the deliberative bodies, you would add. We can read it again.
Lower the cost of collecting signatures and to protect the environment. We should have online petition systems. Online petition collection systems.
Okay.
Okay. In the same way and the same paragraph.
Hold on. Up on that? Or down? Huh. Do that again? Yeah, and then down. You know, there are definitely more yeses than nos for that, but I don't think the yeses get us to a majority, so I think I'm going to leave that out. Sorry. I'm sympathetic, but what's next?
Yeah, we have about 5 minutes.
Okay.
It's a paragraph.
Yes.
I'm concerned, almost all the conference talks about the use of technology.
Yeah.
So I think we should include that in the same paragraph. We should also support the use of the technology for improve democracy and considering the current inequalities in the world.
Okay, so you want to add technology in as the thing. This is again, I had, let's see. Okay, hold on, I'm not spelling. Okay, digital does not appear in this document. It did again here in that first draft. Let's see. Yeah, it was in the struggle. I had this. This is another thing we lost for space. So in the struggle, so this was what I had in the first draft. And we struggle with a digital world that, while offering wonderful tools for democratic practice, undermines institutional norms and relations essential to democracy. I got to tell you, listening to y'all, there are a lot of digital files and a lot of digital folks here. You're divided, I would say, as a group of people. Maybe I'm wrong about that. What do people think about that construction? Not a lot of love. Any down? Yeah, and most people don't care one way. I mean, people would sort of a digital So, all right, so we won't put that in. Anything else? Any other thoughts?
I propose now that it's really always a challenge to do that, and it's clear that it's not like we could work on that for hours and days. We have got a general overview, we got quite an important amount of inputs. There is also the opportunity to email to us points when it comes to language, when it comes to structure. So we try to fine tune that. But I would still like to invite you to, by applause, take this declaration. So feeling that there is a step forward and we will work on that forward. Can we do that? Thank you. Thank you very much. And as I said, this is really still to be fine-tuned and also to be sent out. And this is the moment. That was one part of the magic half an hour. Now comes a magic quarter, because we are now very, very happy and we are very pleased to look forward, because this work is not ready. This work is just the beginning. The Global Forum is a little small contribution to a very big task. And it's important that we meet, important that we get together, that we work together, we see each other also for in between, because in between we can interact. We have, for instance, the democracy.community, you all know, on the platform of the Global Forum and Democracy International, where you can indicate, you can have your file there, your identity, your offer to others, and get into conversation with others, even in between global forums. So what I would like really to do now is to invite, in fact, the organizers, our partners, our hosts of the 2023 forum. We have here all the other forums to take the stage. This is Claudia Zavala Perez and Roberto H. Cardiel Soto. Welcome to the stage. And I have to say that Claudia, she will talk in Itzel. You may also come here. Sorry, Itzel, who is the coordinator of this forum, to present the invitation, to present the offer. Claudia will speak in Spanish, and we will have, if I'm correctly informed, a consecutive translation, so you don't talk too much in one step. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, you will translate. Yeah, very good. Yeah, that's right. So, okay, so Claudia.
Gracias. Muy buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Ha sido para mí un gusto participar en este foro global sobre democracia directa moderna como representante del Instituto Nacional Electoral INE en México. Estoy segura que lo discutido y compartido en estos últimos 5 días contribuirá a construir la resiliencia democrática en nuestra sociedad.
Good afternoon to everyone. It has been a pleasure for me to participate in this global forum on modern democracy as a representative of the National Electoral Institute of Mexico, INE. I'm sure that the topics discussed in the last few days and the reflections shared will contribute to building democracy resilience in our society.
En un contexto, México es un país de más de 126 millones de habitantes, reconocido como nación multicultural, dentro de la cual conviven 68 agrupaciones lingüísticas indígenas, habladas por más de 7 millones de personas. Con 94 millones de personas que pueden ejercer su derecho al voto, México es una de las democracias más grandes del mundo. El sistema político en México consiste en una república representativa, democrática, laica y federal, compuesta por 32 estados libres y soberanos.
In our context, Mexico has more than 126 million inhabitants, recognized as a multicultural nation. Within it, 68 indigenous linguistic groups coexist and are spoken by more than 7 million people. With 94 million people who can exercise their right to vote, Mexico is one of the largest democracies in the world. The political system in Mexico consists in a representative, democratic, secular, and federal republic composed by 32 free and sovereign states.
La división de poderes es un principio fundamental en nuestro sistema político y se refleja en un poder ejecutivo encabezado por un presidente, un poder legislativo bicameral, además del poder judicial. Pero, ¿quién es el encargado de garantizar una transición en la representación de estos poderes en cada elección? Para la transferencia pacífica del poder político y el funcionamiento del orden constitucional, son fundamentales los procesos electorales libres y justos. Por ello, con el nacimiento del IFE, ahora INE, Instituto Nacional Electoral, en los años 90, en México las elecciones las organiza un organismo autónomo y público, encabezado por ciudadanas y ciudadanos sin vínculos con el gobierno o los partidos.
The division of powers is a fundamental principle in our political system, and is reflected in an executive power headed by a president, a bicameral legislative power, in addition to the judicial power. However, who is in charge of ensuring a transition in the representation of these powers through each election? Free and fair electoral processes are essential for the peaceful transfer of political power and the functioning of the constitutional order. For this reason, with the creation of the Federal Electoral Institute, now INE, in the 1990s, elections in Mexico are organized by an autonomous and public body headed by citizens without ties to the government or political parties.
El INE trabaja de la mano de la ciudadanía en cada elección para garantizar elecciones libres, seguras y auténticas que creen el poder de la ciudadanía para decidir. Paralelamente, se preocupa de la formación de una cultura cívica de acuerdo a la cosmovisión política democrática que respete el pluralismo y comprenda la complejidad política y cultural de nuestro país.
INE works together with citizens to guarantee free, safe, and authentic elections that believe in people's power of decision. At the same time, it is concerned with the formation of a civic culture according to the political democratic worldview, which respects pluralism and understands the political and cultural complexity of our country.
En este sentido, entre los fines del INE se encuentra contribuir al desarrollo de la vida democrática, así como a la difusión de la cultura democrática. En otras palabras, la causa del INE es el fortalecimiento de la democracia. El INE ha sido la institución encargada de organizar los primeros ejercicios de democracia directa, legales de carácter nacional en México en los años 2021 y 2022. Los aprendizajes de estos ejercicios refuerzan la necesidad de involucrarnos en actividades que propician la inteligencia colectiva en torno a estas causas, tales como las que hemos analizado en este foro.
In this sense, one of the purposes of INE is to contribute to the development of democratic life, as well as the dissemination of democratic culture. In other words, INE's cause is to strengthen democracy. INE has been in charge of organizing the first legal national exercises on direct democracy in Mexico in 2021-2022. The lessons learned from these exercises bring forth the need to get involved in activities that promote collective intelligence around these causes, such as this forum.
Prácticamente en todo el mundo se habla del desencanto de la democracia y sin embargo, cada día hay más gente hablando de política y participando en ella. Desde esa óptica, en los últimos años he venido sosteniendo que la idea de que la gente no está en realidad molesta o desencantada de la democracia, sino más bien del comportamiento y los resultados que ofrecen los actores políticos. La democracia es en todo caso un método de gestión de la voluntad popular que debe necesariamente estar en continuo perfeccionamiento. mientras que las prácticas desviadas o corruptas son cada vez más abundantes como consecuencia de los insaciables apetitos de los amantes de la vanidad que ofrecen el poder y el dinero.
Almost everywhere around the world, disenchantment with democracy is a common topic. Nevertheless, with each day that goes by, there are more and more people talking about politics and participating in it. From this perspective, in recent years, I've been supporting the idea that people are not upset or disenchanted with democracy itself, but rather with the behavior and results offered by political actors. Democracy is in any case a method of managing the popular will, which must necessarily be in continuous improvement. While deviant or corrupt practices are increasingly abundant because of the insatiable appetite of lovers of vanity who offer power and money.
Es importante decir, sin embargo, que en estos tiempos en los que justamente han sido esos intereses particulares los que han predominado sobre los intereses de las mayorías, el ascenso de narrativas y gobiernos de ideologías opuestas a las economías de mercado, que hay que reconocer que han profundizado las desigualdades, está adquiriendo importantes simpatías y hoy tenemos varios movimientos, partidos y gobiernos que desconfían y critican las democracias realmente existentes y en ese sentido buscan darle nuevas atribuciones y alcances. Y aquí está, en gran medida, el punto de encuentro y desencuentro entre la democracia representativa y la democracia directa. Se trata de una disputa política más que de una forma de gestionar con las mayores garantías posibles la voluntad popular.
However, it is important to understand that nowadays, those particular interests have prevailed over the interest of the majority. Narratives and governments with ideologies opposed to market economies, which you have to recognize have deepened inequalities, are increasing and gaining significant sympathy, and today we have several movements, parties, and governments that mistrust and criticize the existing real democracies, and in that sense, seek to give it to new attributions and goals. And here's where we can find, to a great extent, the encounter and disagreement point between representative and direct democracy. It's about a political dispute rather than a way of managing with the greatest possible guarantees the popular will.
En mi país, y creo que en muchas partes del mundo, seguimos anclados a ese viejo y para mí nada productivo debate sobre si es momento de ir transitando hacia una democracia cada vez más directa, en tanto que la democracia representativa no logra satisfacer las expectativas de la gente. Yo creo, sin más, que la democracia representativa y la democracia directa son procedimientos complementarios y que lo central, en todo caso, es dilucidar en qué casos conviene más utilizar una forma que otra. Otro tema es el de que las cosas pueden, de qué cosas pueden o no ser decididas mediante consultas populares del tipo blanco o negro. ¿No es acaso una casualidad una cualidad de las democracias la existencia de tonalidades grises?
In my country, and I believe in that in many parts of the world, we're still stuck in that old and for me non-productive debate on whether it is time to move forward towards an increasingly direct democracy, but representative democracy fails to satisfy people's expectations. I simply believe that representative democracy and direct democracy are complementary procedures. And the most important thing in any case is to elucidate in which cases it's more convenient to use one form rather than the other. Another relevant topic is what issues can or cannot be decided by black and white popular consultations. Is it not a quality of democracies the existence of gray shades?
Finalmente, cualesquiera que sean las opciones y modalidades de participación, me parece que uno de los mayores retos de la democracia global es que ningún poder puede imponer a la ciudadanía lo que solo a ella le toca decidir. Porque si va a ser el poder el que decida y no la ciudadanía soberana, lo que va a suceder es que se va a corromper el principio de que la democracia es una forma de gobierno en la que el poder fluye de abajo hacia arriba y no al revés.
Finally, whatever the options and modalities of participation are, it seems to me that one of the greatest challenges of global democracy is that no power can impose on citizens, but only they are meant to decide. Because if power is going to be the one to decide and not the sovereign citizenry, what would happen is that the principle of democracy, being a way of government in which the power goes from the bottom up and not the other way around, will be corrupted.
En un escenario complejo como el que vivimos, desde el INE México reiteramos nuestra convicción de que la democracia es el mejor sistema para la convivencia en pluralidad y la transferencia de manera pacífica del poder político. Por ello, creemos necesario recurrir a la inteligencia colectiva, ya que solo de esa manera será posible articular mecanismos institucionales innovadores en un marco de respeto de los derechos humanos y el Estado de Derecho. Es nuestra convicción generar procesos de aprendizaje y tomar nota de otras experiencias compartidas en este espacio, que nos permita reflexionar sobre la resiliencia de nuestras democracias y el presente y futuro de los mecanismos de democracia directa. Enhorabuena por la participación en este foro y nos veremos el próximo año en la Ciudad de México. Gracias.
In a complex scenario such as the one we live on today, we at INE reiterate our conviction that democracy is the best system for the coexistence in plurality and the peaceful transfer of political power. For this reason, we believe it is necessary to resort to collective intelligence as the only way to articulate innovative institutional mechanisms within a framework of respect for human rights and the rule of law. It is our conviction to generate learning processes and take note of the other experiences shared in this event, which allow us to reflect on the resilience of our democracies and the present and future of direct democracy mechanisms. Congratulations for the participation in this forum. See you next year in Mexico. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bruno, thank you for having us here. Joe and all the team, thank you so much. My dear boss, Claudia, thank you. Good evening to everyone. I appreciate this opportunity to have the floor at the closing part of this global forum that has been enriching and has given us so many experiences and data to reflect on and initiatives to start on. In the 21st century, democratization in the world has faced challenges such as the populist governments. Democratic answers have been going forward in the resolution of social problems, as well as generalized perception that in democratic systems, the political class cares more about its interests and those of the elites rather than those of the majority, which has caused weakening of representative democracy and growing political polarization. This has been reflected in the different metrics of the state of democracy globally. At the end of 2020, the number of authoritarian regimes surpassed the number of democratic regimes. According to the Varieties of Democracy project at the University of Gothenburg, even in countries with consolidated democracies, the attack to the civil society organization and mass media is matter of concern for fundamental freedoms and respect to the human rights. This situation has been aggravated by the pandemic of COVID-19. Governments around the world have carried out a set of regulations and measures in order to contain the transmission of disease. However, some leaders have taken advantage of this context to accelerate the process of democratic backsliding by imposing disproportionate measures to the severity of the public health crisis. On the other hand, different studies identify that social networks have sometimes become spaces of segregation that tend to produce echo chambers and close communities prone to polarization. Additionally, there is the problem of the excess of information or infodemic that includes dissemination of fake news in digital spaces. As a result of this, public opinion is manipulated and affects democracies. As a response to the erosion of democracy, the instruments of direct democracy have become an increasingly popular alternative. Currently, 9 out of 10 countries in the world have one or more instruments of this kind. In Latin America, the implementation of direct democracy mechanism has been expanded significantly. Just a few weeks ago, Chile held a referendum to consult the ratification of a new constitution. The exercise was managed within high standards of democratic quality. Colombia has carried out various public consultations, so its voters expressed their opinion about various topics, including the peace processes with the revolutionary armed forces. Recently, in Mexico, we have held the first popular consultation and revocation of mandate, a recall of the president in the 2021 and 2022. This mechanism bring with them new possibilities for improving the quality of democracies, increasing rights, as well as for consolidating democratic participation and citizenship at high intensity level. However, like any institutional mechanism, they also bring them risk that should be warned about. Respect for the rights of minorities and compliance with the rule of law are principles that must be protected at all costs in democracy. Sometimes these principles can be violated by leaders with authoritarian tendencies willing to take advantage of direct democracy to consolidate their power. Likewise, operating roles that facilitate the involvement of society should be chosen as tools designed to expand influence of citizens in decision-making process. Forums such as this that concludes today here in Lucerne help us to outline the value of the direct democracy mechanism and the different ways in which they can be carried out of maximizing the objectives desired by a society. For the resilience of democracies in an unfavorable context, the direct democracy mechanism represents an option that cannot be ignored by authorities and political parties. Based on the vibrant reflections that we have had in these 5 days, I would like to invite you to continue building spaces to promote the exchange of experiences within the framework of the next edition of 2023 Forum on Modern Direct Democracy. The event will take place during the beginning of March in Mexico, organized by different institutions interested in strengthening democracy, including National Electoral Institute. The agenda will be based on 3 objectives. First, taking as a starting point the present, we will imagine the future of direct democracy at a global, transnational, and local level. On this regard, we will study experience and concrete cases that show us the different angles of the citizen participation exercise. Secondly, we will make a critical review of the strengths and weaknesses of the forms of direct democracy in order to characterize the political and institutional arrangements to strengthen this instrument. Finally, we will create space for deliberation to share and exchange opinions and data on the risk and challenge of bad practice and manipulation of the instruments of direct democracy to advance particular political agendas and interests, both in democratic contexts and in illiberal democracies. We hope to meet again in order to continue with reflection, dialogue, and collective intelligence as foundations to recover and strengthen democracies, along with the discussion of the expansion of effective rights and participation in a democratic key for highly participatory and informed citizenry. This is the way, and we are convinced that with a global discussion that incorporates representatives from education and research areas, international organizations, and above all, civil society, this inspirational project will be fruitful. Therefore, I encourage you to keep the dream alive and protect a reality in which all our voices count. Thank you very much, and hasta la vista.
Thank you very much, Itzel, Claudia, Roberto. Thank you for the invitation. We accept it. Immediately start to announce your coming. Register on 2023globalforum.com. It's open to register your participation, your interest. If you can come to Mexico, if you will be part of more of an online community, but please, we are really appreciating that we are setting the stage for the next Global Forum. So thank you and see you soon.
155 days. Thank you very much. I couldn't be more excited. And now you think, this isn't the one, this is not yet the one in County of Summer. This is the greatest global forum that's ever been. We don't do that because global forum isn't over. This is just the end of the plenary. You've got more forum, you've got more democracy yoga at 3 o'clock at the European Public Sphere. If you haven't checked out the European Public Sphere, out down the way, is the omnibus still there? The omnibus is still here, right? Right? Yes, please check that out. That's at 3. And then the Democracy City Summit. The Global Forum has helped birth a lot of wonderful things, including the Democracy City Summit. That starts at 4 o'clock at the Lucerne City Hall at the Rathaus. So we'll hope to see you there. That goes until 5:30, and it is then followed by a reception. Come together, last night in Lucerne at the City Hall Brewery, which I think is sort of the one under the building facing the river. The building is on the river, on the north side of the river. So but you enter the Rathaus from the opposite of the side of the building, opposite the river, but we party on the river, sort of under the thing. Some thank yous. I would thank Bruno, but ever since I saw the Disney movie Canto, I realized I can't talk about Bruno anymore. No. So, but it has been quite a thing. There's so many. Thank you to all the sponsors, all the people, all of you for being here. I have to start with great people. First off, the incredible Andreas Mueller, our leader director at Democracy International, NGO, in a lovely office in Cologne that in spite of the anti-democratic maneuverings of the Carnival Mafia, seem to be able to promote democracy in Cologne, in the Rhineland, in Germany, across Europe, and all over this planet. We thank you very much. No less, I need to thank Caroline Vernian, Pharaoh, to many who simply makes this thing go, is the real leader of this event, as far as I am concerned. Where is she? Yes. There she is, okay. There are few experiences in life, maybe childbirth, more exhausting than being the local host of the global forum. And I didn't say that until the official invitation came up Mexico, so they can't back out now. What Adrian Schmidt has gone through is in a class by itself. He essentially had to organize and reorganize and organize and reorganize this forum multiple times in 2 different cities. And throughout, just kept solving problems and managed to keep this on, and then became a success, a place of such beauty. I mean, he's so good at this, that he managed to make Friday, the outdoor day, sunny. And Saturday, it was hard to get people inside, rainy. I mean, that's skill. So, Adrian Schmidt, with fondest thanks. Thank you.
It's very important to say, of course, there are so many people involved in this global forum, but both on the local Swiss side and on the international global side, there are great organizations which are key to that. I'm very privileged and honored to be on the board of both of them. On the Swiss side, it's the Swiss Democracy Foundation, which in many ways has been the key organization here in Switzerland to make this happen. And I would very much like to invite important people of the Swiss Democracy Foundation, our new director, Stephanie Bossart, to the stage. Not much of a voice today, but she's here, and that's very, very good. And I would like to invite also our 2 key board members, Andy Zilli and Daniel Schiri, also here forward. I would also like to thank, of course, from all of our heart to all our partners here in Switzerland, especially local partners, also the people who have helped very much here, like Albert and Therese and René and many others, to make this happen. Our local host committee with the presidents of all local parties who have been the chair of the local parliament. And also, of course, as I said, the city of Lucerne, the University of Lucerne, you made this all possible. Thank you very much. And now, I have to say that you have seen so many people helping and supporting, and Democracy International is this organization which have really become the infrastructure for the Global Forum in many ways, in preparing, in conducting, in operating, in inspiring. And there are many people in this team I would like to call up here to come down on the stage. Daniela, Anne, Klaus, Josephine, Sophie, Eva, Obaleng, Lodeka, Angel, Theo, Katja, Regine, Kay, Gerhard, and Peter. Last but not least, I would also call our newest member of both these families of working very hard, also at this forum, which has just started at the Global Forum and the Swiss Democracy Foundation a few days ago, and you have seen her important work here also on stage. Florence, please come forward. Of course, all of you, you have made this forum possible. You are the forum. We are the forum. Thank you very much. See you in Mexico. See you this afternoon. I look forward to cheer with you in the brewery at 6.
Yes, and this will be the last word, but one of the most important words. 5 days ago, we started here in this university hall, and I would like to thank 1,000 times to Bruno Kaufmann.
Don't forget to vote. That's right. Oh, yes. And where do you do that? Upstairs. Upstairs. Yes. Yeah. Voting selection. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Much begins, Ralph. Much begins. Andreas? Ein Foto? Dann kommst du.